Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we find ourselves enmeshed in the legacy of Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, a film as enigmatic as it is revered. Shall we start by recounting our first encounters with Kane?
I fondly recall the grainy print at a University Film Society screening. The audacity of Welles's vision struck a chord with the historian in me.
My introduction to Kane was by candlelight during a power outage. It was, for lack of a better word, illuminating. The film resonates with a cultural richness that speaks many languages.
How apt, Amelia. I streamed it in my teens, expecting a lesson in film history, but found a masterclass in human complexity instead.
Indeed, it's a film that confronts us with more questions than answers. My first time was on late-night television, Kane's larger-than-life image flickering in the dark of my living room.
Popping in that VHS tape as a teenager opened my eyes to the possibilities of cinema beyond entertainment. It was art motioning through time.
Interesting how our experiences range from academic to intimate, almost reflecting the myriad facets of the film itself. Now moving on to our discussion. Welcoming everyone, let's delve into the mystery at the heart of Citizen Kane, the significance of Rosebud. Amelia, perhaps you could start us off?
Absolutely, Hal. Rosebud serves as the narrative crux of Citizen Kane, encapsulating a man's life quest within a single word. It's so intricately tied to Kane's childhood, a symbol of innocence and loss that propels his character throughout the film.
Hold on, Amelia, I must interject. While that's the conventional reading, I argue that Rosebud might also represent the artifice of such symbols. Wells deliberately mocks our need to find easy answers, suggesting that life's truths are invariably more complex.
That's a compelling stance, Lenny. In line with your thought, Rosebud from a psychological view could indeed be a red herring, leading us to reflect on our own fixations and the simplistic narratives we impose on our complex lives.
Lenny, I appreciate that alternate angle. It instills a deeper conversation about the narrative.
And going off Jazz's point, this search for meaning in life and art is quite Sisyphean, isn't it? Wells seems to argue for the futility in trying to fully understand a person through a single lens or artifact.
Philosophical as always, Hal. Historical perspective supports this too. History is rich with quests for elusive truths leading to ambiguous ends. Take the Holy Grail or El Dorado, quests consuming lives and yet offering no firm conclusion, just like Rosebud.
Mick, linking those is brilliant. It positions Rosebud within a timeless tradition of our human need to chase mysteries.
There's an irony, though, isn't there? This discussion here is in itself a chase for the elusive meaning of Rosebud.
True, Lenny, but it's a chase that draws us together, bound by our quest to unlock Kane's complexities.
A beautiful sentiment, Amelia. Despite different interpretations, such a pursuit emphasizes not only Kane's layered narrative, but also the personal resonance it has for each of us. Izzy, your insight into art history gives you a unique perspective. How do you see Citizen Kane challenging the conventional narrative structure?
Citizen Kane boldly disrupted what viewers had come to expect. Wells played with time in a way that was nonlinear and fragmented. It's reminiscent of Cubism's impact on visual art, where the subject is broken up and reassembled to challenge perception.
Absolutely, Izzy. It's as if Wells anticipated the postmodern narrative. The film's structure mirrors techniques from literature, predating authors like Faulkner, who also fractured timelines to enhance the depth of storytelling.
And let's not overlook the screenplay. For its time, it was innovative. Flashbacks within flashbacks, shifting narrators, all serve a greater purpose to engage the viewer in a detective story that's really about a man's life.
Innovative, sure, but is it truly successful? At times, these techniques can feel more like gimmicks to mask a rather straightforward story. That's a thought-provoking point, Lenny. Perhaps this very simplicity, wrapped in a complex narrative, is what invited viewers to look deeper.
Lenny, I wouldn't call it a gimmick. It enhances the film, shapes our understanding of Kane. It's an intentional disorientation that immerses us into the enigma of who he was.
Lenny, it's not simply a story. It's the experience of piecing together the man. The story is in the telling, not just the tale.
Fair enough, Amelia. But I'm still of the opinion that the storytelling could overshadow the story itself at times.
Well, I think the narrative's complexity accurately represents the complexity of an individual's life. Real lives aren't lived linearly. Memories and moments intersect and overlap.
Agreed, Mick. It parallels how we internally narrate our own lives, not in neat, tidy sequences, but as a collage of moments.
Interesting thoughts from everyone. We seem caught between the allure of innovative structure and seeking the core of the story. There's no doubt Welles gave us a masterpiece that continues to spark debate. The narrative reliability in Citizen Kane is fascinating, isn't it? We are presented with a series of perspectives, each adding a layer to the enigma that is Charles Foster Kane. Who would like to start with their thoughts on this? Well, it's quite the puzzle, isn't it? The film's refusal to settle on a single truth is in itself a commentary on the nature of truth. Thompson, the reporter, acts as our guide, but he's more of a cipher than a traditional narrator.
Absolutely, Lenny. The structure of the film itself pushes us to question each account. I often think about how it mirrors the act of piecing together history from disparate sources. Each version of Kane we see is filtered through someone else's lens.
And let's not forget, every version we see is also influenced by their memories and biases. It's a wonderful depiction of how history isn't just a series of facts, but interpretations shaped by the people who recount them.
I have to admit, I'm intrigued by the layers too. It's almost like Welles was anticipating the fragmented nature of memory and storytelling that we now associate with postmodernism. Jazz, I think that's a superb point. Welles was way ahead of his time in that regard. We often think of memory as a faithful recorder, but Citizen Kane shows it's more like a painter, mixing fact and emotion on the canvas of recollection.
But one must be careful not to romanticize this fragmentation too much. The film clearly shows the potential danger in having no anchor to truth, misinformation, and propaganda. That's very true, and in our current times, this depiction of manipulated truths and vested narratives couldn't be more relevant.
I do appreciate the film's nuance, though. It doesn't discard the possibility of truth, but it does suggest its complexity and how it's often just out of reach, akin to the ultimate meaning of Rosebud.
To build on Mick's point, it challenges the audience to be active participants, doesn't it? We become detectives, not just passively consuming a story, but trying to weave together our own understanding of Kane.
Well, when you put it that way, Amelia, the film almost demands a kind of intellectual humility. We're invited to consider the limitations of our own perspective. And yet, despite this humility, we can't help but try to piece Kane together, like reassembling a shattered mirror. Perhaps it's reflective of our own need to find coherence in complexity.
Interestingly, this acceptance of complexity often leads to hotter debates. We each cling to our fragments of the mirror, insistent on the shapes we see. Striving to understand while accepting the limitations of what we can know, Welles has indeed left us with much to ponder. It's the kind of ambiguity that resonates across generations. Let's delve into a topic that exemplifies the complexity of Citizen Kane, the intertwined lives of Charles Foster Kane and William Randolph Hearst. Jazz, you've taken a keen interest in the biographical ties here. What stands out to you?
Well, Hal, it's fascinating how Welles danced on the line between fiction and reality. He dissected the idea of a media tycoon, which was obviously a reflection on Hearst. The creative liberties, while provocative, asked viewers to question the power such figures hold. Adding to Jazz's thoughts, the film didn't just reflect on Hearst's life, it impacted his legacy. Ironically, the attempted suppression of the film by Hearst's media conglomerate only fueled public interest, almost becoming self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's imperative to realize the historical context here. Hearst wielded immense influence, so Kane's portrayal as this lonely, power-driven man reflects a broader skepticism of media moguls. Welles was pinpointing a societal apprehension, and rightly so.
To that end, has history been kind to such portrayals in your view, Mick?
In many respects, yes. History enjoys a romance with the flawed hero, or in Kane's case, the tragic titan. We often see historical figures softened or vilified with time, and Welles preemptively cast Kane in that light.
But let's not romanticize Welles's intentions too much. The film is as much a product of personal vendetta and artistic ego as it is of social commentary. Hearst's life is the canvas, but the brushstrokes are all Orson's, often emphasizing scandal over substance.
I must counter that, Lenny. Welles was creating art, not a documentary. The essence of Kane captures a truth about Hearst that might have been lost in a purely factual account. It's the emotional truth, not the factual minutiae, that resonates within art. Precisely. Welles gave us more than just a biographical account. He gave us a psychological exploration. The man behind the headlines became a character study on the effects of power and isolation.
Jazz, you've hit the nail on the head. It's not about vilifying Hearst or idolizing Welles. It's about introspection and what these figures symbolize within us all. Conflating fiction with reality invites viewers to reflect on their own lives.
Introspection is a luxury that Kane affords, but Hearst did not have that privilege. The film's artistic liberties came at a personal cost to Hearst, and that's an ethical issue we must not forget.
And so we find ourselves grappling with the moral dynamics of a filmmaker's liberty in painting a portrait of a living person. Thank you all for this rich and heated discussion. Let's continue to peel back the layers of Citizen Kane and its enduring impact on cinema and culture. As we pivot to the subject of the American dream, perhaps we start with the paradox of Kane's wealth. Izzy, your thoughts on Kane's opulent lifestyle juxtaposed with his apparent emptiness?
Well, it's a fascinating look at the hollowness of material success, isn't it? Kane amasses what most would consider the American dream, yet Welles shows us the facade. The opulence of Xanadu couldn't fill the emotional void.
Indeed, and that's a universal theme, isn't it? Across cultures, we see this narrative of seeking fulfillment in wealth and status, only to find it lacking.
He's built an empire, but at what cost, Amelia?
At the cost of his happiness, Hal. Kane's loss of innocence, the disintegration of his relationships, they all signify that his wealth is just a veneer.
Exactly, and the film brilliantly critiques that dream through the very structure of his mansion. The larger it looms, the smaller he looks within it, a powerful visual metaphor.
Hold on, that's an oversimplification. Kane's ambition was also his attempt at connection, to influence and be remembered. It wasn't merely materialism.
There's a challenge then. Is ambition at the root of his downfall, Lenny?
Partly, but it's also his means of self-expression. His acquisitions, his newspaper, they're extensions of himself, attempts to carve out an identity.
Well, I dare say it's a cautionary tale about capitalistic pursuits. The solitariness of Kane's death speaks volumes about the ultimate price of such success.
Let's not forget the era Welles is critiquing. Post-Great Depression, there's this vast skepticism about wealth and power. Kane embodies that societal disillusionment.
Absolutely, Mick. And the American dream isn't just an American theme. It's the human pursuit of meaning through achievement, and Welles taps into that profoundly.
Amelia, how does that square with your multicultural vantage point?
Well, it resonates beyond America because the idea of seeking fulfillment outside of oneself is a human condition, not bound by geographies.
That universality is part of what makes Citizen Kane timeless. The core of human desire hasn't changed. We still grapple with these aspirations.
True, but it's specifically capitalism's promises that Welles is putting under the microscope. That's what makes it so poignant, especially in an American context.
Agreed, though it's not just a blanket vilification, it's nuanced. Kane is as much a victim of the system as he is its perpetrator.
That's a powerful point, Lenny. A tragic figure in a sense. Someone who achieved everything but really gained nothing.
It seems we agree that Kane's pursuit, and perhaps demise, illustrates a significant moral and societal quandary within the American dream. As we move on, keep in mind the rich layers of Kane's character that Welles ruthlessly unfolds for us. Let's pivot our discussion to one of the technical marvels of Citizen Kane, the deep focus cinematography. It's a technique that Welles used to profound effect. Jazz, could you lead us into this aspect?
Certainly, Hal. Deep focus in Citizen Kane was more than a technical achievement. It was a narrative one. It allows multiple storylines and emotions to play out in the same frame, offering a richer viewing experience. Greg Toland, the cinematographer, used wide-angle lenses and innovative lighting to achieve these deep focus shots. It's a technique that invites viewers to actively engage with the film, to choose where to look.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how it puts the onus on the audience to decipher the scene. There's a democratization of the frame, where both the foreground and background have equal importance.
I have to jump in here. It's true that deep focus creates an immersive environment, but let's not assume it makes the film more realistic. It's still a carefully constructed illusion, guiding the viewer's gaze more than you're implying, Amelia.
Well, Lenny, that's a provocative point. Despite its constructed nature, the psychological impact of deep focus can't be dismissed. It mirrors the complexity of human perception, how our eyes roam a room, take in various planes of focus.
Jazz, you hit the nail on the head. It also reflects Kane's own life, doesn't it? Everything happening at once, layers upon layers of stories, just like our memories. Everything in focus, regardless of timeline.
Interesting angle, Mick. Now, what do we think about the claims that this technique aided realism in filmmaking? Isn't that contradictory to the film's larger-than-life style?
An excellent point, Hal. Realism in film is always a contentious topic. I'd argue that Citizen Kane toys with our perceptions of real and unreal. Deep focus may make the film look realistic, but Orson Welles ingeniously uses it to his own surreal ends.
I must say, Lenny, that's one way to look at it. Another perspective, though, is how deep focus enabled layers of a story to coexist. In life, as in art, events and people don't wait their turns. Everything converges. In that sense, deep focus connects with the real messiness of life. Yes, and Izzy, remember the scene at the breakfast table? The depth of field emphasizes the growing emotional distance between Kane and his first wife. Their physical proximity in the shot is ironic against their intimacy, which is, well, out of focus.
It's curious how we're all circling back to depth in both a literal and figurative sense. That's one of the reasons this film endures. Its multifaceted layers of interpretation.
Indeed, Mick. Now as we move on, let's keep in mind how techniques like deep focus contribute to storytelling, not just in Citizen Kane, but in the evolution of cinema itself. Initial reviews back in 1941 were mixed, with some critics failing to see the genius we attribute to Citizen Kane today. Jazz, how do you interpret this significant shift in critical reception over time?
It's quite fascinating, Hal. Many masterpieces are ahead of their time, and Kane is no exception. The technical and narrative complexities likely overwhelmed critics. As the audience's cinematic literacy grew, so did appreciation for Welles's work.
True, Jazz. And let's not forget that Hearst's media empire supposedly suppressed the film's success. The change in reception is as much about shifting cultural tastes as it is about the film finally being judged on its own merits.
I must interject, it's not just cultural tastes, it's the historical context. Post-war audiences were looking for different stories and styles. Kane was bold, it was new, and it took decades for its impact to truly be understood.
Speaking of impact, Lenny, how would you argue that history has played a part in Kane's enduring critical status?
Hal, history isn't just a backdrop, it's an active participant in this discourse. As Mick rightly pointed out, context is king. The rise of television and a growing skepticism toward media figures like Hearst made Kane more relevant, thus impacting its critical re-evaluation positively.
Lenny, that's a fine point. The cyclical nature of history often recasts artworks in new light. As our world mirrored the themes of power and media manipulation found in Kane, we found more to appreciate in Welles's prescient vision. And let's not discount the role of auteur theory in recalibrating our judgment. As directors became celebrated as the authors of film, Welles's role as a visionary director undoubtedly lifted Kane's status.
Mick, you often talk about the influence of historical context. Could it also be that the film's restoration and re-release in later years contributed to its renaissance?
Absolutely, Amelia. Its reintroduction to cinemas and later on television expanded access to the film, allowing a new generation of critics and filmmakers to experience and champion its artistry.
Critics play a significant role in assessing a film's place in history. But there's also a personal core to Citizen Kane that keeps it alive in academic circles, not to mention its thematic richness.
Yet we must be wary of conflating academic adoration with universal appeal. Depth of discussion does not always equate to depth of impact amongst a wider audience.
There's a truth to that, Lenny. In academia, Kane is dissected for its cinematic innovations, but let's not forget its emotive power, something that resonates beyond scholastic walls.
Indeed, the universality of its themes, power, loss, isolation, gives it legs. Those emotional currents run through every era, allowing Kane to endure and engage.
Well put, Nick. The ability for Citizen Kane to simultaneously serve as a scholarly piece and a profound human story is what cements its place in the canon of classic cinema. Delving into the themes of power, media, and democracy in Citizen Kane, it seems more relevant than ever in today's digital age. Izzy, you've studied the evolution of media. How do you see Kane's portrayal of media control reflecting on our current situation?
It's fascinating, Hal, truly. Citizen Kane foresaw the influence and power of a media mogul, which today we can parallel to the tech giants who control information flow. Kane's New York Inquirer manipulated public opinion, much like how algorithms shape our news feeds.
Precisely, Izzy. And considering the recent talks on data privacy and digital echo chambers, Welles was ahead of his time in showcasing the consequences of media control. I must say, though, he may not have foreseen the degree of individual empowerment through social media, for better or worse.
I'll play the gadfly here, Jazz. Aren't we giving the film too much credit? Modern tech conglomerates operate on algorithms and data analytics, not personal agendas like Kane's. There's a stark difference.
Lenny's got a point. Yet, despite this, the essential concern remains the same: the concentration of power and its impact on democracy. It's a different landscape indeed, but Welles tapped into an eternal truth about human nature and power dynamics.
I'd say both arguments hold water. Our media landscape has changed, but the essence of power's influence through media portrayed in Kane is an old song that still finds a way to stay on the charts, historically speaking.
Jumping off from there, does anyone feel this portrayal might affect the trust in democracy and media today? It seems to have predicted a certain skepticism.
Skepticism, Hal? More like cynicism. The level of distrust in both democratic institutions and the media is alarming nowadays. Perhaps it's more pronounced with the advent of fake news and information warfare.
While that cynicism can be toxic, a healthy dose of skepticism in our media consumption, something Citizen Kane advocates for indirectly, can actually safeguard our democracy by encouraging critical thinking and discernment.
Izzy, I'll give you that. But then, is complete objectivity a fool's errand? Kane shows us the murky waters of self-interest mixed with the reporting of facts. It's a cautionary tale that perhaps no source can be fully unbiased.
True, but we can't give in to total mistrust, Lenny. That would play right into the hands of those who aim to deceive. Instead, we should look to multiple, reliable sources and make informed judgments, a solution Citizen Kane subtly nudges us towards.
That's an excellent point, Amelia. We could argue that Citizen Kane serves as a reminder for vigilance in a democratic society, to take nothing at face value and to question our media as much as it questions our world.
It looks like while we may not all agree on the extent of Welles's forethought on the media's trajectory, we do recognize the film's enduring power to provoke discussions about the nature of media influence in democracy. Thank you for such invigorating perspectives. As we delve into the production of Citizen Kane, it's impossible not to marvel at the ingenuity Welles brought to the filmmaking process. The hurdles he faced brought forth, arguably, some of the greatest innovations in cinema. Your thoughts, Jazz?
Well, Hal, the technical innovations were indeed game-changing. Welles and cinematographer Greg Toland utilized deep focus to an extent previously unexplored, allowing for multi-layered storytelling within a single shot. The complexity this added to the narrative is profound.
Absolutely, Jazz. And Welles wasn't merely a great technician, he was an artist. His background in theater imparted a boldness to experiment with lighting and shadows, creating those iconic Gothic visuals that have become synonymous with Kane.
So true, Amelia. It's the fusion of his audacious storytelling with innovative techniques like the low-angle shot that solidified his reputation. Despite his inexperience in film, he trusted his vision and, more importantly, his team, which included some of the best, like editor Robert Wise, who later directed classics like The Sound of Music.
While I appreciate your points, we can't gloss over the fact Welles was, at times, excessively ambitious to the detriment of the production. His lack of experience did create friction and, some might argue, unnecessary obstacles.
A valid perspective, Lenny. Perfection and innovation often walk hand in hand with struggle. Mick Dick, does the historical context reflect this?
Lenny has a point. History is full of visionaries whose reach exceeded their grasp, resulting in troubled productions. But it's that same audacity that brings about progress and change. Welles's insistence on defying norms fundamentally altered the language of film.
I'd like to build on Mick's point. This idea of using a non-linear narrative, it pushed film into a realm where time and memory became pliable tools. It was this fearlessness that landed Welles a unique contract with RKO, granting him creative control unheard of for a Hollywood newcomer.
Indeed, but let's not overlook the problems that ensued, especially with the backlash from Hearst and the struggles for distribution. The artistic triumph was nearly overshadowed by these confrontations.
True, but these conflicts are part and parcel of challenging the status quo. Welles was a disruptor, which in any field, especially in art, is bound to invoke resistance. Can you imagine how different the landscape of cinema might be if he had bowed to pressure?
Right, Amelia. It's that unwavering commitment to his art that has left us discussing Kane over 7 decades later. It's a testament to the triumphs that can emerge from the tempest of production, a suitable moment to reflect on the courage it takes to not only create art, but to revolutionize an industry in the process. When we think of Citizen Kane, it's impossible not to consider its influence on postmodern cinema. The fragmented narrative itself almost feels like a precursor to many films we celebrate today for their non-linear storytelling.
Absolutely, Hal. Welles dismantled traditional narrative forms and reconstructed them in a way that still feels avant-garde. It foreshadowed filmmakers like Tarantino, who are lauded for such disjointed narrative structures.
He not only presaged postmodern techniques, but his thematic focus on the inaccessibility of truth and the multiple perspective storytelling approach echoes the very core of postmodern philosophy.
To add to Mick's point, the blending of documentary and fiction styles in Kane also challenges the audience's perception of reality. It questions the authenticity of the narrative, which is a hallmark of postmodernism.
That blurring of lines between reality and fiction is key. Welles was ahead of his time, echoing what Godard would later say, cinema is the most beautiful fraud in the world.
While I concede to the film's groundbreaking structure, I'm often wary of labeling something as a clear precursor to postmodernism. Such demarcations can oversimplify the complexity of a film's place in history.
I understand your point, Lenny, but Welles's self-reflexive approach in the film is hard to ignore. The way Kane calls attention to its own artifice demands a recognition of its postmodern elements.
Lenny, surely you must see the influence Kane has on what we've come to understand as postmodern films, its patchwork of memories, contrasting narratives, and the pastiche of styles.
Hal, of course, there's an influence, but every groundbreaking work shouldn't necessarily be seen as a roadmap for future movements.
Fair enough, Lenny, but it's hard to deny Orson Welles' foresight in terms of narrative complexity and his subversion of classical storytelling, which certainly paved the way for postmodern narratives.
And not to forget, the inclusion of pastiche through the news on the march sequence itself is a nod to postmodernism's characteristic playfulness with styles. It's like a highlight reel of cinematic techniques of that era.
He did indeed stitch together a film that dissects time, memory, and perspective in a manner that many postmodern filmmakers would nod to as an inspiration. Welles was unrestrained by cinematic norms, and that's the bedrock of postmodern film.
You all make compelling points. Welles may not have intended to map the route for future filmmakers, but in his innovation, he certainly lit the path. Well, as we draw this discussion to its close, let's consider the legacy of Citizen Kane. I'm keen to hear your final reflections on how this film has shaped our understanding of the cinema that followed. Mick, would you start us off?
It's clear, Citizen Kane isn't just a film, it's a historical beacon that continues to enlighten us on the evolution of storytelling. Its influence resonates through generations of filmmakers. I stand in awe of its audacity, even now.
I agree with you, Mick, on its lastingly transformative impact. Welles was truly visionary in fusing technology and narrative. His unique storytelling mechanisms are now mainstream, thanks to his pioneering spirit.
Absolutely jazz. Kane was like a precursor to modern indie films that break away from traditional narratives. It's intriguing to watch new filmmakers channel bits of Welles in their work, don't you think?
Good points all around, but let's not romanticize it excessively. The real genius of Citizen Kane isn't that it did everything first, but how it synthesized existing ideas so effectively. It's a masterclass in cinematic innovation, but Welles had his forebears.
Lenny, it's vital to acknowledge the past, but also to marvel at how Kane catapulted us into new realms of artistry. Amelia, your thoughts?
Welles defied genre conventions, which in itself was a paradigm shift. Each frame of Kane is a complex interplay of past and future, speaking to human universals. It forces us to confront the spectra of morality and power.
And the way it juggles with profound themes of idealism, fallibility, and the mutability of truth. It's like a Rorschach test. Each generation finds new meanings in it.
Indeed, jazz, and those themes are as relevant today as they were in Welles's time. As a historian, I assert that the fabric of time may change, but the threads of humanity's narrative endure.
I cherish how Kane challenges us to think about media's role in democracy. That discourse is incredibly potent, especially today as we navigate the digital media landscape.
Izzy, the cynic in me, would argue that Citizen Kane offers more of a cautionary tale than a hopeful one. It critiques the concentration of media power, a warning just as pertinent now as then.
That's an essential point, Lenny. We live in times where Kane's concerns are not historical, but everyday realities. Now, as we close, what do each of you take away from Kane for your own work and views on cinema?
I'll always be a proponent of pushing boundaries in art and science, and Citizen Kane is a lodestar. In my work, I strive for that kind of relentless innovation and depth.
For me, the film reaffirms the incredible power of story. Weaving narrative strands that speak to different cultures and times, it's humbling and inspirational.
Kane teaches me that no matter the medium or the era, authenticity of voice and courage in creative expression are paramount. We should all dare as Welles did.
As a musician and a historian, I resonate with its timeless quality. It's a symphony of images and ideas that continues to modulate through ages, remaining as relevant as ever.
And I take from it that skepticism has its place in art. It's crucial to challenge accepted narratives and search for deeper truths. This film masters that narrative tension.
Your insights have been as illuminating as the film itself. Citizen Kane remains a mirror reflecting the ambitions and failings of humanity, as well as the untamable nature of the human spirit. Its place in the pantheon of cinema is well-deserved. And with that, our earnest debate must conclude. Thank you all for this enriching discussion.